There are some places you should never step into, some doors you should never open, and some people you should never give a ride to. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true-style horror tales that will make you check every lock in your house. A room where whispers never stop, an apartment where the tenant never leaves, and a late-night passenger who might never get out of your car. These aren't ghost stories you tell around a campfire. These are the ones that follow you home. Turn the lights off and listen closely, because if you hear breathing right behind you, it's already too late. It was past midnight in a small, forgotten town in the Midwest. At the very edge of town stood an abandoned house. Locals whispered about it, claiming no one had lived there for decades. Yet strange flashes of light could sometimes be seen through its dusty windows. Sarah, a journalism student, was working on a documentary about local urban legends. Her project? To spend a night inside that house. She carried only a camera, a flashlight, and a worn-out notebook. The walk from the main road was eerily silent. Dry leaves crunched under her boots as she approached the front porch. The wooden door was slightly ajar, swaying in the cold wind. Above it hung a faded sign that read, "Welcome home." Sarah stepped inside. The air was icy, thick with dust. Then she heard it, the faint sound of a child's giggle coming from upstairs. She froze, shining her flashlight toward the staircase. Nothing, just an old rocking chair slowly creaking back and forth. On its own, she tried to shake it off and kept exploring. The dining room, the kitchen, a narrow hallway, each lined with faded portraits of a family, a mother, father, and a little girl. But in every photo, the girl's face was blurred, almost as if someone had scratched it out on purpose. Picking up one of the frames, Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. From somewhere behind her came a whisper, "Go back." She spun around, empty. Her camera kept recording, but the screen began flickering with static. Determined to get the full story, she decided to check upstairs before leaving. Halfway up the staircase, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Sarah's pulse quickened. At the top, she found a small bedroom. In the center stood a crib, and inside it lay an old, dust-covered doll with one missing eye. She reached down to pick it up, and the door behind her slammed shut. A freezing draft swept through the room. In the cracked mirror by the crib, she saw not herself. Staring back at her was a pale little girl, clutching the same doll, her lips curled into a twisted smile. Sarah's flashlight flickered violently. In the final blink before it went out, the girl opened her mouth, revealing rows of jagged, sharp teeth, and let out a scream so high-pitched it felt like glass shattering inside Sarah's skull. The scream drilled into Sarah's head, a shrill, inhuman sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. She dropped the doll, covering her ears, but it didn't stop. It was inside her mind. Her flashlight died, plunging the room into darkness. Only the faint green glow of her camera's night vision lit the crib. The crib was empty. Sarah swallowed hard. She replayed what she'd seen in the mirror in her head. That face, those teeth. She told herself she had to leave. She stumbled toward the door, yanking at the handle. It didn't budge. It felt like someone was holding it shut from the other side. Then her camera's screen caught something in the corner. A flicker of movement, a small shadow. She panned left slowly, and froze. Hanging upside down from beneath the crib was the girl. Her pale face was inches from the lens, her hair dangling like black vines, and her eyes, completely black, stared straight into the camera. Sarah screamed, dropping the camera. The night vision spun wildly before landing sideways on the floor. She pounded on the door. "Let me out. Let me out." The door suddenly creaked open, but instead of the hallway she'd entered from, there was now a long, narrow tunnel stretching into pitch-black darkness. Water dripped from the ceiling. The floor was scattered with old, broken toys. Somewhere deep in that darkness came a whisper. "Play with me." Her heart hammered. The only light came from a weak bulb far ahead. She had no choice. She stepped into the tunnel. The toys began to shift and rattle. A tiny tricycle rolled toward her on its own, picking up speed until it slammed into her shin. She gasped, stumbling back, and when she looked up, the light at the end of the tunnel was gone. Everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, she was back in the bedroom. But now, the crib wasn't empty. The girl sat inside, her twisted smile frozen in place. This time, she reached out a hand toward Sarah. Her fingers were dripping with something dark. "Why did you come here?" she asked, her voice layered, as if 2 people were speaking at once. Sarah backed into the corner. The girl stepped out of the crib. Each footstep made the air colder. Sarah's breath came out in white puffs. The girl leaned in so close, Sarah could feel the chill radiating from her skin. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Now you can never leave." Sarah's scream cut through the house, but the camera recorded only a burst of static. The next morning, police entered the house after reports of strange noises. They found it empty, except for a single crib in the upstairs bedroom. Inside was Sarah's camera. On it was one final photo. Sarah, sitting in the crib, her head tilted, wearing the exact same smile as the little girl. When Mike moved to the city, he thought he'd found the perfect deal, a cheap 1-bedroom apartment in an old brick building downtown. The landlord barely made eye contact when handing over the keys, muttering something about keeping the door locked at night. Mike didn't care. He was just happy to finally have his own place. The first night was quiet, too quiet for a building in the middle of the city. No traffic noise, no neighbors moving around, just an unsettling stillness. At exactly 3:11 a.m., Mike woke to the faint sound of footsteps. Above him, slow, heavy. He remembered the landlord saying the fourth floor had been sealed off years ago. So who was walking up there? The next morning, Mike asked around. The old woman in 3A wouldn't even look at him when he brought it up. She just whispered, "Don't go upstairs." By the third night, the footsteps returned, this time stopping directly above his bed, then dragging like something heavy being pulled across the floor. He grabbed his phone, intending to record it, but the moment he hit record, the sound stopped. Days later, he discovered a narrow, locked stairwell at the end of the hallway. The fourth floor access sign was almost worn away. Curiosity gnawed at him. One night, after too much whiskey, he decided to see for himself. He used a screwdriver to pry open the door. The stairwell smelled of mold and something metallic, like blood. As he climbed, the air grew colder. His breath puffed out in pale clouds. At the top was a hallway lined with peeling wallpaper. Every apartment door had deep, violent scratches across the wood, except for one. For B. The door stood perfectly clean, untouched. Mike reached for the knob, but his phone suddenly buzzed in his pocket. A text. Unknown number. It read, "Go back now." His heart pounded, but he pushed the door open. Inside was a living room, fully furnished, like someone still lived there. A faint smell of lavender hung in the air. The TV in the corner flickered with static. Then he noticed the family photos on the wall, all of them slightly wrong. The faces were blurred or smeared, except for one figure, a tall man in a black suit. In every picture, the man stood just behind the family, his face pale and featureless. Mike's skin prickled. He stepped closer to one of the frames and realized the man's head was turned toward him now. The static from the TV grew louder. From the hallway behind him came slow, deliberate footsteps. Mike froze. The footsteps in the hallway were heavy, steady, and impossibly slow, as if whoever, or whatever, was walking wanted him to hear every single step. He turned, but the hallway outside was empty. When he looked back at the photo, the faceless man was gone. The TV's static began to shift. Through the snow of the screen, faint shapes moved, outlines of people, their heads twitching unnaturally, mouths opening and closing without sound. One of them looked exactly like Mike. The air turned icy. His breath fogged in front of him. Then, from somewhere deeper in the apartment, a door creaked open. "Hello?" Mike's voice was barely above a whisper. No answer. He followed the sound, passing through a narrow kitchen into a small bedroom. In the center of the bed sat an old rotary phone. Its receiver dangled off the side, swinging slowly back and forth. It began to ring. Mike hesitated before picking it up. The line hissed, and then a voice, distant but clear, whispered, "You shouldn't be here." The phone clicked dead. Mike turned to leave, but the bedroom door was gone. In its place stood a blank, unbroken wall. Panic surged through him. He spun around looking for another way out, and froze. The man in the black suit was standing in the corner. His featureless face somehow watched him, even without eyes. Mike's body refused to move. His breathing became shallow. The man began to step forward, each footfall making the floorboards groan under impossible weight. The room darkened until the only thing visible was the man's pale face. Mike blinked, and suddenly he was lying on his own bed in his apartment. It was morning. Sunlight streamed through the blinds. He laughed nervously, telling himself it had been a dream, until he noticed the fine black dust on his shoes. The same dust that had covered the fourth floor. That night, he locked his door and tried to sleep. But at exactly 3:11 a.m., he woke to find his apartment door wide open. In the hallway stood the man in the black suit. Mike couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The man stepped into the apartment, closing the door behind him. The last thing Mike saw was the man's face bending down toward his, filling his entire vision. The next morning, the landlord found the apartment empty. The bed was neatly made. The door to the fourth floor stairwell was sealed shut with fresh nails. And in apartment 4B, a new framed photo hung on the wall. A picture of Mike, standing in the living room, smiling faintly, with the faceless man right behind him. Ethan drove for a rideshare company on weekends. It was easy money, until that night. It was 2:46 a.m., a cold, foggy Saturday. He was about to call it quits when a new request popped up. The pickup location was on a deserted road just outside the city. When he arrived, there was no streetlight, only the pale glow of his headlights cutting through the fog. Then he saw her, a woman in a long gray dress, standing perfectly still at the edge of the road. She didn't wave. She didn't move until he rolled down the passenger window. "You called for a ride?" he asked. She nodded once, slow, before opening the back door and slipping inside. Her skin was so pale it almost seemed to reflect the light. She smelled faintly of damp earth. The app didn't show a drop-off location, just a straight line leading deep into the woods. "Where to?" Ethan asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She met his eyes through the glass. "Just keep driving," she said softly. Her voice was calm. Too calm, as the road narrowed, The trees pressed closer, their branches clawing at the car. The fog thickened until it felt like driving through milk. After 10 minutes, Ethan glanced again at the mirror and nearly swerved. The back seat was empty. He slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The car was dead silent except for the faint tick of the cooling engine. Then a whisper came from right behind his ear. "You missed the turn." He spun around. She was sitting in the middle seat now, her head tilted unnaturally far to one side. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. I didn't see a turn," Ethan stammered. She smiled faintly. "It's not on the map." The GPS on his phone flickered, the blue line dissolving into static before reforming into a single red arrow pointing straight ahead. The road grew rough, potholes jolting the car. The air inside turned cold enough to fog the windows. Finally, she spoke again. "Stop here." They were in the middle of nowhere. No houses, no lights, just an unpaved path leading into the dark woods. Ethan hesitated. "I don't think stop." Her voice was sharper now, cutting through the air like ice. He put the car in park. She leaned forward, her breath icy against his ear. "Wait here. I'll be back." She stepped out and walked into the darkness without a sound. Ethan watched her vanish into the trees. He locked the doors. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Somewhere in the woods he heard footsteps, but they weren't coming from the path. They were circling the car. The footsteps circled the car twice, then stopped. Ethan's breath fogged the glass as he peered into the fog-choked night. Nothing, no movement, no sound. Then a slow tap on the rear window. He twisted in his seat, but the window was empty. Another tap came, this time on the driver's side. He turned back. Still nothing. The silence stretched so long that he almost convinced himself it was his imagination. Then the passenger door lock clicked open by itself. Ethan's hand shot to the switch, locking all the doors again. A second later, something slammed against the trunk so hard the car shook. His instincts screamed at him to drive, but his body wouldn't move. His phone, still mounted on the dashboard, buzzed with a new notification from the rideshare app. "Passenger returning. Please remain in vehicle." The message dissolved into static letters before vanishing completely. From the darkness ahead, the woman emerged, but she wasn't walking. She was gliding. Her feet never touched the ground, her dress dragging through the dirt without making a sound. She stopped just in front of the hood, her head slowly tilting from one side to the other, like she was studying him. Ethan tried to start the car. The engine coughed, then died. Her lips moved. He couldn't hear what she was saying through the windshield, until her voice whispered directly into his ear. "You shouldn't have waited." The next thing he knew, she was gone from sight. Ethan fumbled for his phone, trying to call 911, but the screen was nothing but black, until a single line of text appeared. "Look in the mirror." His hand shaking, he glanced at the rearview mirror. She was sitting in the back seat again. Her eyes were black voids now, her pale hands resting neatly in her lap. "Drive," she said. Ethan didn't argue. The car roared to life on the first try, and he sped down the dirt road, desperate to reach any sign of civilization. But no matter how far he drove, the road never seemed to end. The fog swallowed the world outside until it felt like he was driving through nothing at all. Finally, she spoke again. "Stop." He didn't. Her voice sharpened. "Stop." The steering wheel jerked violently in his hands, spinning the car off the road. The world turned upside down in a crash of metal and glass. When Ethan's vision cleared, he was lying on the cold ground beside his overturned car. The woman was gone, or so he thought. A pair of pale feet appeared in his blurred vision, inches from his face. He looked up and saw her leaning over him, that same faint smile on her lips. She crouched down and whispered, "Now, you drive me home." The next morning, police found Ethan's car abandoned on a dirt road. The driver was never found, but the rideshare app showed his account was still active, still taking rides, and his next passenger was already waiting.